Welcome to the Exit Insights podcast. This is the conversations where we're dedicated to helping business owners prepare for exit so they can maximize value and exit on their terms. I'm Daryl Bates-Brownsword, and today I'm joined by Mark Edwards from Boss Equity. Welcome, Mark, and great to have you on the show today.
Thank you, Daryl. I welcome the opportunity actually to answer questions as I've been asking them. Yeah,
it's nice to get on the other side. Hey,
it is.
Why don't you give us a bit of background, Mark, and as to how we got to having you on the show, because you've got a really interesting background and a lot of experience that listeners are going to get a lot from today.
Well, hopefully so. Yes. First of all, I've got a podcast called Boss It, so that's the comment about I'm typically asking the questions. So Boss Equity, we started back in 1999, worked internationally right from the very start, but we specialize within the software technology sector. And that's because of my own background. That's where I came from. I had an M&A background in working with a wide range of business owners and of businesses of different sizes. Then I exited that. I got into the software sector where I was actually running software company. I was selling software. I was a shareholder in various software companies, in large and small software organizations. And I thought, actually, this is the place I'd like to stay. There's so much potential, and we're seeing that even more so today. It's right at the heart of the whole world digitizing. So we decided to be specialists, to use that knowledge. And, over the last 23 years, seem to have flown by, but we've done deals on 4 continents. I've been involved in well over 120 deals now, starting to lose count, and all different types of software technology businesses during that time. So it's been very enjoyable, very stimulating.
Yeah, it's you get to look at the business from the inside out. You get to know them and the owners pretty well. It's a bit of a privilege, really, isn't it?
You do. I mean, my clients become friends. You do get to know these people. You have to get a feeling for the people and the client at the start. I always have this sort of mental process that I go through, and I always used to say to my colleagues is about the first impression you want to get is, what's your client like? Could you work with them? Will you enjoy working with them? But also get a feel for their personality, because that will also give you an indication as to what type of business that they've got.
Yeah, absolutely. So 120 odd deals. You've seen the game from both sides.
Yeah.
That's what intrigued me to go, look, I've got to talk to Mark on the show. There's something there. He's got a lot of wisdom and a lot of knowledge that is really relevant to the clients of this show who are getting ready and starting to think about, hey, I need to start preparing for exit. They're the ones who are sort of 3 years out going, hey, how do I get the most from my life's work? How do I gear this business up? How do I make the transition that works for me? So it's a similar conversation there. So you must have a lot of stories. You must have from both sides and what the mistakes are. So should we start digging there?
Sure. I mean, although I specialize within software tech, prior to this worked sort of more generally in a wide range of businesses. The principles apply to all types of businesses. And I would say that, even if you haven't got a software tech business, I think the vast majority of the principles will apply to your business as well. Yeah. So it's worth listening. Well, stay tuned.
That's the thing about business is the context is, we've got our business is now a product that we need to sell. We've been building our business for years as business owners. We've been selling our product. We're really comfortable with selling our product. We understand our market. We understand where our customers, our clients come from, what they're looking for, what problems we solve for them. Now we're selling our business. Our business has become the product that we're selling. And we're going, and I'm, as a business owner, are often intimately involved. So let's start at the headlines. What are some of the things you see that would really hold back a business when you're in the M&A side of things? You're going, hey, I'm starting to do my due diligence on this business. What are some of the things you see that go, yeah, maybe I won't take this one any further. I don't want to acquire this business.
Well, I mean, the majority of our work has been working with the seller. So going out into the market to find the buyer, but we also have worked on the buyer side, so with the buyer mandate as well. So in that respect, again, I've sort of seen both sides. I think some of the issues and the big one is people leaving that exit strategy too late.
Yep.
They have a board meeting, and for a whole host of reasons, and we can cover some of those, they decide that they want to sell the business, and then somebody comes up and says, we will probably do this in 9 to 12 months. And I'm not saying that you can't do it within that time, but I actually, and I've done a series of seminars where I say, begin with that exit strategy in mind from when you very first start the business. Yep. People think that's a little bit crazy, but actually I think it's very useful in building the business, because you start to view the business in a different way. The business isn't you, or it isn't those shareholders. It is a separate entity, and you need to build it in a way that will make it saleable. And the sooner you start doing that, the easier it will be.
You're speaking with a real level head there, Mark. And yes, the business is a separate entity. You rock up, you just happen to own the business, and you got to treat the business as a separate entity. Can't argue with that. The reality is something different though, isn't it? Business,
well, there's an aspect to that is I've seen, this is a bit of a sort of a psychological aspect to this, and this is probably not where I expect to go, but I've seen founders who get to the stage where they want to sell the business, but the business now becomes so much part of their personality and their way of life that actually they struggle and they can't let it go.
Yeah, it's like a baby. It's their
absolutely baby. Yeah. And that's quite often where, and typically for sort of smaller businesses, where they're wanting to not let it go, but they know that they can't lead that business any longer for a host of reasons, and they might want to hand it on to family members. And that in today's society, and just my experience, and again, this is in the software sector, typically fails.
Yeah.
Is that the next generation, they've probably, quite often they've been involved in that business, they've grown up with the business, they will have their own ambitions, and it probably isn't to run that software business. So they feel as though it's being hoisted upon them, and sometimes they're not that right personality type, that's not their motivation, or they haven't got the right skills. And unfortunately, I've seen quite a few businesses that have been handed on to the next generation and have failed very, very quickly. Successful, profitable businesses that just slump.
Yeah. And that's because they didn't have the end in mind. It's kind of a knee jerk. Do I hand it on to my family? They're not clear around what the options that are available to them. Yeah. Do they wind it up, and do they want to exit from equity? Do they want to exit from a day-to-day role? Do they want to exit from the board, from control? What do they want to exit from? What is it that they're not getting joy from anymore? And then how do we transition that gently? Because even when our kids grow up and leave home, they might go off to uni, and they keep coming back on weekends, and then eventually they might sort of leave forever. It's a transition period. We get conditioned, they get conditioned. It's a nice transition. In a business, I guess the most often we see that type of transition is with an earnout. Why do earnouts exist? Well, the buyer's going, well, I want an earnout to de-risk it, because this business I'm looking to acquire is wholly dependent on the owners or the founders being there. So I need them to make sure I get those forecasts. From the seller's perspective, they don't want an earnout because it puts all of their money at risk. They've been offered a whole lot of cash at some point, and then down the track they might get some more cash, hopefully, if everything goes okay, when they've no longer got control of what happens on the runnings of the business. So there's a transition that we typically don't want, or we want to minimize the risk associated with that. So what are some of the things that when you're buying or selling that you've done to help owners minimize their risk, and therefore minimize the risk for the buyer as well, and make it a more attractive deal for both sides?
Well, you covered quite a few things, and earnout is something I'd like to come back to. Right. But if I was sort of to take this in sequence, I suppose the first thing is getting to understand the shareholders, who's been running this business, what their roles have been, how much the business is dependent on those individuals, and what's their motivation for exit. And one of the questions that I will often ask them is, what are you going to do next? because it's not always retirement, especially now. Things have changed. People are more fluid in their careers. People move on more quickly. And I think rightly so. There's a lot of people that see themselves as being those sort of entrepreneurial types who will have an idea, will build on that idea, create value, create employment, take the business to a certain size, and then say, actually, taking this business further means me having to be a different type of person. It's now going to be, or it could be, a big part about managing people rather than taking an idea, taking a technology, looking for the opportunity, making it work, doing those initial marketing, creating relationships. Building a sort of a medium-sized business quite often involves different skills. And I think what rightly happens is that those people who are sort of appreciative of what they enjoy and what they don't will say, it's probably time for me to sell and go and do it again. And that actually can be very successful. I'm quite keen on working with returning clients. We've had a successful project together, and in fact that we've been able to work on a business together, position it and sell it successfully. But they've been through that journey. That successful track record helps them, for instance, if they want to raise investment, to have been through that journey once. So understanding the motivation and understanding what they want to do next tells me a lot about what's going to be involved in that process.
Yeah. And yeah, you've said something that we focus on as well, as if the owners, founders, they're entrepreneurial people, they're energized, they're active people who get on with stuff.
Yep.
They're the sort of people, even though they might say it at the time, hey, look, I want to sell the business and I want to sit on a beach and drink pina coladas. Well, we know they're going to want to do that for 2 weeks and have a break, and then they're going to want to do something again. So, we focus on what happens next, because I've just seen too many deals, and I imagine you have as well, where the owner's not clear, they don't have any clarity about what they're going to do next. For some reason, the deal just doesn't come off. It doesn't proceed. It's stalled for some reason. They'll find an excuse to delay it. When they do know what the classic entrepreneurs, shiny new thing, they grasp hold of that new thing that they're going to do and they run with it. And it's almost like they almost let the business go, but when the timing's right and they're prepared and the business is prepared, they can move on to what's next for them. And I like what you say. We talk about what's next because it's not necessarily retirement. Some of them want to go on and invest in other businesses. Some want to start a new entity, new enterprise. But when they're clear about what's happening next, they're running.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also, a lot of the businesses that we've been involved with, they have multiple shareholders. The larger organization where you've got multiple shareholders, we're looking to understand that shareholding structure.
Yeah.
Who has the power within it? And also, what is the motivation for those individual shareholders? Has somebody got the right to veto an acquisition? And actually their motivation is totally different from the others, because you could get to the point of having a great deal on the table and somebody saying, I don't want to do it.
Well, that's part of preparing for exit, isn't it? Getting the shareholders aligned, and what are our shareholder agreements like? Are they drag and tag? Can a small shareholder veto it? How does it do? How are we going to agree on a deal when there's multiple shareholders? There's a lot of groundwork that needs to be done in part of that preparation stage, because as you point out, you don't want to get to the point where we've invested hours and days and months of work to get here, and then to hear someone go, yeah, no, I don't want to do it.
I mean, asking the question of why do you want to sell your business? I don't want to oversimplify this, because I've never asked a potential client, why do you want to sell your business? And they go to me, don't know, no idea, I haven't thought about it. They've always got an answer, but I see my job is helping facilitate their thinking to think about that process and the motivation a little bit more deeply, not only for me to understand, but for them to understand as well, because that can also be contributing to the type of deal structure that they may want, which you mentioned about earnout. And earnouts, I've done a lot of deals where there aren't earnouts at all. And actually, it's not as black and white as you may think, in the fact that, the buyers want earnout and the sellers don't. Not in the software sector. Anyway, I'm not talking more broadly, because remember, a big and a more increasing aspect of the value of software companies is the high level of recurring revenue that they have, particularly now that we've moved to, SaaS models.
Yep.
And you've got subscriptions and you've got long-term contracts in place, and you've got a fast-growing company. An owner of a smaller organization, I've got a couple of opportunities, clients that I'm working with at the moment, they want to be acquired by a larger organization because it enables them to accelerate their business. They're growing, they're profitable, but as part of a larger organization, what they've got, the value that they've built up, could be leveraged through a larger network. And not just the network, sometimes the value of what they've created is very difficult for large corporates. So if it's a product or a service that's particularly applicable for the very largest corporates, and you're a small organization, but there's a high value with that product or service, and they look at you and say, wow, if we go ahead with you, that's 50% of your overall revenue. That's a risk.
Yes.
Now, as part of a much larger, $1 billion organization, that's not the same perceived risk.
Absolutely. That's a big consideration, isn't it?
Yeah. So in that case, and there's been a number of deals that have done that, that organization in part of a larger group grows much more quickly. And yes, those current shareholders do want an earn out, because if the deal's structured in the right way, they're going to earn more money. They're going to earn more money over a shorter period.
And yeah, look, it's a really good point to make, because we can talk about not wanting earnouts, but there are reasons and valuable reasons why you would want one. And do I become a shareholder in the new entity and going, this is kind of a partial exit, it truly is a merger rather than an acquisition. Yes, we're being acquired, but it's a strategic reasoning, and we're part of a larger organization, as you suggest. And we've got a game in our second part of the game is in this bigger organization, which is kind of cool. So it's a win-win-win for to coin a phrase for everyone.
but there are reasons to be wary, and you have to be informed. And I think one of the I've thought about this quite a lot. One of the reasons that I think that all of my clients have been bright, intelligent, well-educated people that with confidence, because in order to be able to build a business, you tend to be of that nature. They're smart guys. They're used to doing deals, and that's their Achilles heel. They think selling their business is just another deal. And it's quite incredible sometimes what I've seen when you're selling a business. And now this is not just a deal you're doing within your business. This is a life-changing moment. I've had several examples I can think of, but one in particular, which was a man, very, very level-headed guy, laid back, relaxed. I never saw him ruffled. He was very particular about, having a very well-organized business. He was analytical. We went through a process. We generated a lot of interest. We brought 12 potential buyers to the table, and we got down to the company that we thought was going to make the best offer. And they made the offer and the deal structure, and it was a really good offer. And his face went blank. And I looked towards him to get some sort of feedback from him. I knew it was a great offer, but you always want to get that sort of feedback. And I knew this guy very well. I was going to read his body language. And he said, "Excuse me, can I just go outside with Mark for a moment?" And we got up and we walked out. And he said, "What did they just say to us?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "I'm sorry." He said, "I just didn't hear it." And I had to talk him through the offer. He just got overwhelmed by this moment. I mean, it was months and months of work to get to that point.
Yes.
And it really surprised me. And then he sat down and we had a cup of tea. They're still in this other room. And I said, "How do you feel?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "It's a bit dreamlike," he said, "but I think I've got it now." And we went back in and he had his business face on again, and he was fine. And we concluded the deal. But that surprised me. So, you don't know how it's going to affect you.
Well, what you're highlighting to me is the importance of going, look, for most business owners, this is potentially life-changing, or it's at least significant life event. You need, and if you can do it on your own, no problem. But you don't know about all the gotchas that could catch you out. And that's why you've got to have someone like yourself, someone, some advisors to prepare you along the way, because Yeah, and it's where we started the conversation, isn't it? You're running your business, you're familiar with running your business, you're doing deals, you're doing products, marketing, running your business day in, day out. You're familiar with that. When it comes to selling your business and your business is now the product, it's often the first time you've done this. It's still a bit of a deal, but it's a different type and it's not your normal market.
The biggest area where I become a bit concerned is not actually when the entrepreneur does it for the first time. It's when they do it for the second or third time, or they have somebody on their board who they say is very experienced in M&A, and they've done maybe half a dozen deals. That's when I become most concerned, because they often feel they know it all. And I've been doing this for a long, long time, and I've done lots and lots of deals, and I never think that. And I always think every deal is different. And, I had one example. It was a company that I knew very well, and I knew quite a few of the board members very, very well. And they had somebody join their board, and he had done half a dozen deals, and he wanted to handle the M&A process. And I met with him, and we had a conversation, and we were talking about potentially him being my point of contact. And actually what he wanted to do is he wanted to handle the whole thing. He didn't want boss equity involved, which was a shame, because I knew the business and I knew the people. And he told me about the deals he'd been involved in. And because I knew the industry very well, he'd been at companies that had been acquired, or he'd played a small part. And then in two of the other deals he'd been involved, had actually been terrible failures. Yes, he'd been through 6 acquisitions, but he hadn't managed that process, didn't really understood it. And in the 2 that he had managed himself were total failures. And that false confidence is a problem, and which later proved to be true. They had an aborted M&A process, which is something that you don't want, because that can be harmful to your ongoing business today. Competitors can use it against you. It can create uncertainty for staff. It can create uncertainty in the market. And if you handle it in the wrong way, it can become known that you're a business that's sort of up for sale.
Yeah. And I'm just thinking, as you were talking through that, I'm just thinking about any business. If they'd had 6 sales in their experience, you wouldn't go that they're an experience. You've got your first 6 sales. Congratulations. It's a great start.
Yeah.
Now, it doesn't mean you've got a business with just 6 sales.
No. And in reality, he hadn't had 6 sales. He'd been at a company that had been acquired a couple of times. That's a little bit different.
Yeah. So it's amazing. The more advisors I'm talking to on the podcast, the people who are doing deals, and we've got a lot of experience of leading up to deals and getting people deals done. And it's why we started Succession Plus. But since doing the podcast, I've talked to a lot more brokers and corporate finance people and funders and of various types. And they all cite, a common theme is inexperience is something that can become a deal breaker, either because they want too much, they want too little, they're unreasonable in their expectations, and they're just unprepared. They're just not aware of the work that's required and what a buyer wants from your business. In your world, you may have a fantastic business compared to the rest of their market, but it doesn't mean it's attractive to a buyer and ready for exit. There's so many things that can go wrong that you just haven't considered, and they haven't impeded in you running your business.
I've been involved on the buy side, and I've had a clear profile of the type of organization that my clients looking for, approached companies that fundamentally would be an ideal fit, but they're just not prepared. And I've been aware of how much my client would be willing to pay for the right type of organization, because it was a strategic fit.
Yep.
and really provided a lot of value for that company. But I could see a deal couldn't be concluded because they just weren't ready.
Yeah.
And that's one of the other things, is you should always be in a state to be ready, because you don't know when that golden opportunity can come. And it's about timing sometimes. And you can't tell when that might happen. I mean, I see indicators within certain sectors within the software sector. You can't think of it as one big market, where certain sectors become very, very hot. They become very active, and there are reasons for that. But strategically, for one organization that's perhaps pivoting, changing, and going in a different direction, that strategic move may depend on them gaining expertise or technical or client base or location, which means that business is very, very valuable, and they'll be willing to pay more. And that's the other thing is about valuations. When people think that a valuation is something that's worked out on an Excel spreadsheet by accountants, and it isn't.
It gets you in the right park, doesn't it? And it's a starting point, and valuation.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes it puts you in the ballpark, right ballpark. Sometimes it doesn't at all. You know,
We need to.
I've been surprised many, many times.
At the end of the day, when people say, "What's a business worth?" I go, "Well, it's what is like anything. It's what someone's prepared to pay for it."
Yeah, that's right.
What we want to do is make it more attractive, so it's attractive, and to a wider group of people. You want to make your market bigger. If you're just a business that's unprepared, you might be attractive to a competitor. Who's just looking to buy a few clients. If you establish and develop and prepare your business a bit more, it becomes attractive as you're saying, to someone who's strategic. And they'll go, this business will fit in my portfolio, and they'll fill a gap in the portfolio I don't have.
Yeah, I mean, one of my clients once used this phrase when we were explaining about what we do, how we work with the client, and we were sort of breaking down the different stages. He said, "I get it. You get us match fit." I quite like that idea, but that isn't about just presenting the business or changing or some sort of marketing hype to make the business look more valuable than it really is.
Buyers can see through that really quickly.
Absolutely. And I've seen that as well. One of the other things that I'm always checking is, have they done the obvious thing, which is to increase their profits by just reducing the costs? That will be spotted within minutes.
Yeah.
That doesn't help at all.
Yeah, I don't know what to say. Look, it's whenever we're selling a business, where business is being sold, the buyers are always, in most cases, more experienced at buying and selling businesses than you are at selling. So this is, they're acquiring, so they're more experienced, so they can spot the trick. It's like selling a house. If you slap on a coat of paint and you slap it over the floors and you don't fix any underlying issues, an experienced buyer will notice that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Buyer of businesses will go, well, they've struggled the financials, like they're just slapped together, try and make it look pretty. Yeah, well, which just means we'll be more ruthless in our due diligence, because all of a sudden we don't trust it. So we need to be a bit deeper. Clearly they're not exit ready. They're not attractive. We won't spend a whole lot of time on it. We'll move on. And it's because of things like that only 20% of or so of businesses that go to market actually end up getting sold. So
typically the larger organizations, that they may have an M&A department or a number of people that are just running that role, that process. They'll be looking at many different types of acquisitions, and they go through them quite quickly. If there's something early on that raises a red flag, they'll probably not bother looking any further quite often. Depends on what it is. But it's really important that you are able to establish trust and credibility at a very early stage.
Yeah. So, Mark, we've covered a whole lot of ground, and you've got a wealth of knowledge and experience, and I think
you're just saying I'm old, aren't you? It's another way of saying you're very old. You've been doing it a long time.
And I'm also saying it's time to wind this up. So
yes.
So the listeners are sitting, they're at the end of their dog walk, they're at the end of their commute. What's the one thing that you want listeners to remember from what you've shared with us today? Key points.
Key points. Start early. Start thinking about that process early. Make sure. I think it was Daniel Defoe in Robinson Crusoe. Set to sea with a mariner who knows where the reefs are. I think that's an important point, because there are many out there, and you can trip yourself up and you can run aground. Without mixing my analogies. Understand and really understand why you're looking to sell and why you're looking to sell now. And also be able to have that flexible perspective that you can step outside of the business and be able to look at your business in the same way that a buyer would. And I think if you go about it in the right way, don't be fearful of selling your business. Quite often, it's the right thing to do for your business and the employees within that organization. and for yourself, there comes a time when it is right to sell. Quite often I have people come to me, sort of an initial discussion, because instinctively they know that it's time to sell the business. And I think part of my job is helping them to understand why they have that gut feeling. I would say go with your gut instincts, because quite often they give you the right answer.
Yeah, it's great advice. Great advice. So prepare it early. I guess you're saying, get some help with that. Trust your gut. And if you are prepared, there's nothing to be afraid of.
No,
And
no, absolutely not.
It will go smoothly because you've done the groundwork, you've built the foundations up front. Yeah, and you'll know that you're getting the most from your life's work. You're getting a good deal. Hey, they're top tips. Thank you.
Super.
Well, thanks for your time today, Mark. We'll include some of your info, how to get in touch in the show notes. But appreciate you joining us today.
Super. I've enjoyed talking to you today, Darryl.